know you're doing the City Club, and I'm glad
Right.
we could arrange this on the same day. You seem to get 10 times as much news as everybody else running for president.
Seems.
Maybe create 5 times as many enemies.
Yeah,
along the
right.
way.
Do the enemies
So
also.
That's
the bad news.
You got Neil Young.
Yeah, that's the bad news.
Is that all part of a purpose?
Perhaps. I don't even know.
He's saying you're the best brander in the world.
Right.
Is it all part of
Well, you know, it's interesting. I stick up for myself, whether it's Blair or whether it's Neil Young or whether it's anybody. I stick up for myself if I'm right. If I'm not right, I'm the first to admit that I'm not right. But I like to think I'm always right, you know, so. But I stick up for myself. And, you know, like Neil Young comes up to my office. It's not a big deal, but he comes up to my office, calls me, you know, a while ago. And, you know, over the last probably 5, 6 months, I went to his concert. He saw me in the concert. I didn't go backstage or anything. And then he called me the next day. They said, it's Neil Young. And I said, that's strange. What does Neil Young want? And I saw him the night before, because I think he's excellent. And he came up to my office and he asked me for money. Wanted $5 million to do a sound system or something. It's not my world, you know, sound system. I like to do buildings, right? But I had a great conversation. He was up there for a long time. Then he called me about 2, 3 weeks ago, said, could you come to my concert? I'm going to be in Jones Beach. And I said, yeah, you know, I'll think about it if I can. I mean, I don't know, but if I can, I will. And that was it. And then just as background, you know, we had about 10 songs. We had background music, right? That you get by paying a small stipend. They actually have this thing nowadays. You pay this thing and you get all these songs. And so one of the songs was his, and I put it on, just, again, background as I'm coming in, along with other great entertainers, and all of a sudden his manager really started. It was more the manager than anybody else. He saw an opportunity. So I hit back. I mean, I told him the story, that he came up asking me for money, which made him look like a hypocrite, frankly.
They asking you to stop using it?
Yeah, no, they said, please don't use the song. And I said, no problem. But then all of a sudden he went out to the press with it, you know, to get a little free publicity on my back. So I didn't use it, and I don't even care that much for the song. I mean, it's not the greatest. I like some of the other songs much better, but I didn't use it. But I won't be going to Jones Beach, let me put it that way. And you know, other things, Univision, nobody had a problem. You know, I got rave reviews for my speech, and nobody had a problem with it. Everyone thought it was great. Then one week.
Not everybody.
Well, I got very good.
Drugs, crime,
yeah.
Any regrets
well, no,
what you said?
No, not at all. You know, I wish I had. So I looked after a couple of people said, "Oh, gee, you know, Mother Teresa's the only one that comes across the border." And first of all, let me start by saying this. I have great relationships with Mexico. I love Mexican people, the spirit. I think they're great people. I have many friends that are Mexican. I sell many apartments to people from Mexico. So I have great relationships with Mexico and Mexican people. And what I'm saying, and what everyone knows, is that coming across the border are some rough hombres. You have some rough stuff. So I went out. In fact, I have one of the articles that I was actually going to use in my speech later. It said a large percentage of the women coming across the border are, let's put it this way, it was a Fusion article done with Huffington Post, which is, you know, from a different planet, and it was talking about the tremendous crime, exactly what I was saying. And Fusion is owned by Univision. And it talked about, oh, there it is. Here. 80%, this is done by Fusion, owned by Univision, I believe. And it's printed by Huffington Post, okay? It says headline, 80% of Central American women and girls are raped crossing to the U.S. That's the title. And I said to myself, wow. I said, do you have others? I have hundreds. Here's illegal immigrant teen rapes and murders a 93-year-old Nebraska woman. Here's one, suspect in crash that killed Bob Berry Jr. was deported 3 times. Had bad record. He's a big, actually, sportscaster or announcer. And there are hundreds of these articles. And what happened is, and it was sort of an amazing thing, but I signed a contract to broadcast Miss Universe, which I own, and no problem. In fact, there was a bidding war between them and Telemundo, the 2 primary Spanish networks. And Univision got it. They signed the contract. There's no termination right. They called me up and they apologized. But what happened is I've been hitting Mexico very hard on, I respect Mexico. Their negotiators are much better than ours, much better. And they're making unbelievable trade deals. Ford is building a $2.5 billion plant. They took a plant that was supposed to go to Tennessee, and they did another plant there with one of the big companies, car companies. They're doing unbelievable. And they're out negotiating us, and they're taking jobs away, and I'm making that point very clear. And in my opinion, Univision was told by the Mexican government, what do you do with Trump? I mean, what do you do? And they're not happy with me, the Mexican government, because I'm explaining what's going on. They're taking our jobs, they're taking our manufacturing, they're taking our base. Then they'll sell this stuff back to us for nothing. No tax, no nothing. So how does it benefit us? The fact is our country has lousy negotiators. We don't know what we're doing. And I let it be known. So Univision attacked me because of the border. And by the way, the border's a mess, just in case anybody has any question. The border's a mess beyond articles like this. There are hundreds of articles like this. The border's a mess. So they tried to make me like a racist. This has nothing to do with race. This has to do with we have illegals, and not just from Mexico, from all over. Probably from, you'll probably see them from the Middle East also. But we have illegals pouring into the country and we don't even know. So Bruce, that's all I say. And now people are saying, Trump is right. And there's now been some articles that actually Trump has turned out to be right. And rather than just sitting back and taking that from Univision, it's one of those things. Now, over the next short period of time, I'll be suing Univision. Over the next week or two, or maybe sooner, I'll be suing Univision. So I have a contract where they pay me a lot of money over a 5-year period. They just said, and very apologetically. And then you had one of the top people, Univision, put a picture of me with the horrible human being that killed the people in South Carolina. And I said, that doesn't work. They then took that picture down and they apologized to me profusely. And I didn't accept their apology, but that's okay.
Why do you want to be president?
Because I can make the country great again. The country is run by people that, in my opinion, I know you're, from the area, but I'm from the area too. I have a big investment here. The country is run by a group of people that don't know what they're doing. And I'm not just blaming Obama. Goes on all sides. Some of the Republican leaders aren't exactly stellar either. But I would make the country great again. I would take back our jobs. I'd take back our manufacturing. I would take back things that nobody's even talking about. There's not one other candidate, Bruce, that's talking about what I'm talking about. Today, I don't know if you saw that China just lowered their interest rate. Well, what they're doing is they're weakening. By doing that, they're going to, a quarter of a point, that's a lot. Just announced a little while ago.
Wrap up those.
Excuse me?
You throw out a lot of issues, a lot of ideas, and then there's where's the how. The idea that I'm going to take down ISIS. I got a plan. I'm not going to tell you what the plan is.
Well, I did say the plan. I would rather not say the plan because, honestly.
But what is it?
Oh, I gave the plan, actually, but I'll say it now. ISIS is very rich. ISIS is tremendously rich and powerful because they have a lot of money. You know where they get their money from? A lot of it is from the oil because they took the oil. They took a lot of the oil. That I said, by the way, when we left Iraq, I said you shouldn't go into Iraq. In Reuters, in 2004, headline article, Trump, don't go into Iraq. You're going to destabilize the Middle East. Everything I said in that article was right. We're going to lose the oil and Iran will take over the Middle East. Everything I said in that article was right. I should be given credit for that. I'm not given credit by the press. With me, it's like pulling teeth. Other people, as an example, I'll give you an example. I have been saying for about 2 years, somebody running for president, and I say it somewhat jokingly, but I say somebody running for president shouldn't be using teleprompters. Because I don't use teleprompters are very easy. You read a speech. So Christie's running tomorrow. I guess he's going to be announced. And he made the statement, and I'm not using a teleprompter. Well, I've been saying the same thing for 2 years. Nobody's ever picked me up on that. He says it once, and it's a big story. Christie's not using a teleprompter. I think the press, it's very interesting. I went to...
Can you go ahead and tell us your ISIS plan?
Yes, I will. Knock out the oil. Blast the hell, take the oil away from them, blast the hell out of it. And by the way, you can rebuild that infrastructure very quickly. ExxonMobil and these companies would go in there and they'd knock it up very fast. Take the oil away, take their money away, take their source, you kill them at the head, and you knock the hell out of it. And you would see a different ISIS. They're building a hotel in Syria. Did you know that? ISIS is building a hotel. They're competing with me. They're building a hotel.
Can they beat you on rates?
They can only beat me on interest rates, yeah. Because they get their money for nothing. They have the oil. So very strongly, and nobody's ever said it. Now here's the problem, 2 things. I didn't want to say it because, if I run, I win. Now I'm running. But I run, I win. That's really bad to say this. You know, I've watched Obama talking about his strategy in the Middle East, whether it's troops on the ground or not troops on the ground, or they shouldn't be talking about it. General Douglas MacArthur, a great general, General George Patton, they didn't talk about it, they did it. They don't talk, they do. When we caught the sort of mid-level accounting person 3-4 weeks ago, we shouldn't have said we caught him. Because we had such big news conferences about catching this one guy that everybody else scattered. If they didn't know it, we would have been able to do much more damage. Too much talk, not enough action. Of course, that's politicians. They're all talk, they're no action. So great. I mean, I'm glad you specifically focused me on that. Knock the hell out of them with the oil. When we went into Iraq, we should have never gone in. And if you get that, it's July of 04. And the Bush administration.
What did you say in July of 04?
July, that's the Reuters article. That was an article quoting me saying we should not go into Iraq.
We were already in Iraq.
No, you were in, but I said, well, I'm not a politician. I won't get instantaneous, but I said we shouldn't be in Iraq. That was the early days of Iraq. I also said it before that, but there is an article in 04 saying we shouldn't be in Iraq and we should get out, you know, as soon as we can. We were in there for a little while, but we weren't in like we got in ultimately. And I said that it will destabilize the Middle East, that you had these two forces. You had Iraq and Iran that are essentially militarily the same. We've decapitated one and the other took over. It's exactly, if you read that article, it's exactly, in fact, if you could get them the article, it would be great. But and somebody should be given credit for that, you know, because that is called division. Then I said you shouldn't get out, you know, they got out very precipitously. But I also said if you're going to get out, keep the oil. And I've been saying that, and people said, oh, that's a sovereign country. It's really not a country, as far as I'm concerned, because you have so many different groups. They don't fight for, they have different groups of people that fight for those groups of people. I call it an artificial country. And Iraq, I said, when we left, I said, if you're going to leave, keep the oil. And some people thought that was great, but some people thought it wasn't great. If we kept the oil, you wouldn't have ISIS right now. You wouldn't have ISIS right now. And you'd have plenty of payback. So that is my plan that was my plan. Now the problem is the plan now, all of a sudden 2 other candidates brought it up and said, oh, we ought to attack the oil. You know, 2 things I don't like. Number one, I don't like giving the enemy, because if you do win, it would be nice wouldn't it be nice if they didn't hear that? But the other thing is, in politics, you get copied. They're all copycats, because most of them have no imagination at all. So they copy. 2 other candidates are going around, oh, we ought to attack the oil. I gave the thing. I gave it out about 2 weeks ago. Because obviously I knew I couldn't keep that too long. Okay, thank you.
You know the news out of Greece and Puerto Rico.
Terrible.
You're in the state with the largest debt, I think, in the nation. Chicago is in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah.
As president, would there be an answer? Is there a government answer to those states and cities that are they're just beyond their ability to?
Well, you're in one of the worst, if not the worst. New Jersey's a disaster. That's why I think Chris is going to have a very hard time. New Jersey's a disaster. Wisconsin's a disaster, by the way. You read the front page of your paper. Wisconsin's a disaster. He's loading it up with debt so he can try and get away with not raising taxes, because nobody wants to say they raise taxes. But you might be, are you the worst of all? I mean, just about. Pretty close. Yeah. Per capita, that you're the worst? Well, congratulations. Congratulations. It's a real problem. I mean, you know, you see what happened with Detroit. They went bankrupt and they renegotiated their debts and everything else. And it's very tough to ask the federal government to bail out a place, because you have other states that are doing very well and are very well run and very well, you know, they're fantastic. It's very unfair for those states essentially to come in and help a state that has not been managed well. I've been in this state for a long time. I have so many friends that live here, and even before I built the building. And I must say, I've had a great, you know, I built that building in a horrible market. It was a great market. The market changed right in the middle, and I toughed it out, and it's been a great success. It's you know, just got rated the #1 hotel in North America. That's from, I think, Condé Nast Traveler. It does great. It's, you know, it's good for everybody. It's good for you folks. I figure you have to give me a good editorial because I sell so many of your papers. They don't even buy it. I buy them. I buy thousands of them. But anyway, but no, and I you know, I'll just say, because I don't know if the group, you have a great paper. You have a paper that's really respected. I can tell you that, Bruce. So it's very hard to ask the federal government, because states that are really run properly and don't even think about the federal government, essentially they'd be paying for a bailout. So, you saw what happened with Detroit. You see what happens with other places. This is going to be a bigger and bigger problem, because I know many states are in trouble. You take a look at New Jersey. People thought New Jersey was solved. New Jersey's number 2 bad right now. It could be number 1 bad. And other states are in big trouble.
Do you get to a point where a state or a city is too big to fail?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But I think bondholders are going to take a big hit. I think bondholders, you can't do that. You have to, you have to let it go out there. And I will say this, the state the taxes are too high. I'm paying a fortune over there. I'm paying more there than I pay in New York, relatively speaking, in terms of between the real estate and everything else. We pay a lot of tax. We have tax on top of tax. And what it does is it drives people out of the state. If you live here, you say, well, why should I do that when I can go to Florida and pay nothing? New York is losing a lot of people to Florida. You're losing a lot of people to Florida.
There's a lot of talk of trying to bail out the city with a casino.
Right.
Have you had any discussions? Your building is always going into the mix when that comes.
Yeah, well, I did great in the casino business. I was in Atlantic City, and I got out 7 years ago, which was great time. A lot of the financial press gave me great marks on that because my timing was great. I saw what was happening. They were going to approve it all over. They approved it in Maryland. They approved it in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. And that was a big portion of our market. That was like 45% of our market. And the analysts all said, oh, it's not going to have that much of an effect. It'll have maybe a little blip. I said, a little blip? That's 45% of my customers. How can that be a little blip? Instead of driving for an hour, they're going to drive 5 minutes. And I turned out to be right. I got out 7 years ago. I was in Buffington Harbor over here, which was right nearby. I had the privilege of dealing with Don Barton, which was not a privilege at all. But I did very well there, and ultimately I sold that boat, and they combined them, and I don't think it's done too well after that, but I made a lot of money on that deal. That was a very successful deal. I built a boat, Barton built a boat next to it. Barton since passed away, but we ultimately sold that for a very substantial profit to Barton, and so I know a lot about the gaming. The gaming's a double-edged sword. Takes money out of people's pockets and not able to pay. Depending, you have crime problems. You have a lot of different problems with gaming, but you also have some revenue coming in. But it really is a double-edged sword. Gaming is not the panacea. It used to be the panacea, and the problem with gaming is once you do it, everybody else is going to do it, and then you're going to have an Atlantic City problem. In other words, Atlantic City was great. I was there in the heyday. I made a lot of money. I built a lot of my empire with Atlantic City. Nobody knows that. A lot of people say, oh, but Atlantic City wasn't good for you. And somebody, one of the smartest guys in business, heard that about 2 weeks ago. Said, wasn't good. I wish it wasn't good to me like it wasn't good for Donald. Because I was there during the heyday, and that fueled a lot of the things. I own a lot of real estate, and a lot of it was fueled by Atlantic City. But 7 years ago, I got out. What happens, though, is a lot of other places will follow, and they're already talking about that. So, it's a very tricky proposition. You can take in revenues, but
the mayor should be pursuing a casino, or do you think for the city?
I think it's something you should look at, but every time people look at it, by the time you'll have additional crime, you will have other areas doing it, and you take a lot of money away from people. You have a lot of people that will gamble money away, and they're not going to be able to pay their taxes. So it's not the panacea that people think. And sometimes it's a short-term panacea, but in the end it ends up, look at New Jersey. They wish they never heard of it now because it's been, it's been.
Jersey have never gone there? Or is there something Jersey could have done?
Well, the difference is,
okay,
yeah, it's a great question. You're in Chicago. This is a great city. This is an amazing city. Look at it. I mean, some of the greatest buildings. I love this. I come here, I love it. I've been here for a day and a half now, and I love it. I love being in that building. The building is just, I'm very proud of that building. But this is Chicago. Atlantic City was gone. It was horrible. And for Atlantic City, it was good, but ultimately they made a lot of bad decisions. They didn't build the airport properly. They built the convention. I used to fight them like crazy. The politicians destroyed it. Like they destroy everything. Politicians always destroy. Very rarely do they do the right thing. The politicians in New Jersey built a convention center in the wrong location. They could have taken the existing hall right on the boardwalk and rebuilt it and added 3 walls and a roof, meaning expanded back. And I fought like hell for it. That's one of the reasons I left Atlantic City. So they ended up building a brand new convention center in the middle of nowhere that was landlocked because of environmental lands. And it was so bad that they had to build a hotel. They had all the hotels on the boardwalk, right? You wouldn't have had to build. So now they built a hotel. It had the lowest occupancy of any hotel, like 22% in the country. So they spent hundreds of millions of dollars building a hotel after the conventions because the convention center didn't work. So they made a lot of mistakes. But Atlantic City was different because it's not Chicago. You know, you don't have the Tribune building in Atlantic City. You don't have this whole incredible infrastructure. With that being said, Bruce, I do want to tell you that Chicago is getting killed with the crime. I mean, people are using Chicago as the password for crime, which hurts me because, you know, I have a big investment here. It hurts me psychologically. Amazingly, we're having...
Does it hurt your business-wise?
No. In fact, is Colin here? Is he in the room? My manager just said we had the best month we've ever had.
So why should we worry about it hurting us psychologically?
Because I think it's bad for Chicago. I still think it's bad for Chicago. I think it's terrible. Well, first of all, on a human basis, it's terrible because you're losing, you know, so many people. Somehow, people don't know that we're not talking about maybe this area, but maybe it ends up flooding to this area. But I think the concept of, you know, there's so much bad publicity about the killings in Chicago. Everyone thinks Chicago, people that aren't here, they don't know it's in a different area. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do to stop it, but I do think it's very bad for the image of Chicago. With that being said, it hasn't affected us. Now, maybe it will someday, but so far we're doing fine with the hotel. But I do think that that's, you know, pretty bad stuff.
Speaking of negotiations,
yes.
We've got some negotiation going on with Iran coming down to the wire here.
Yeah.
Have you been keeping track of those? What do you think?
Totally. I think it's incompetently held. I think it is disgraceful, and it's been delayed again. Now it's going way out into July, and I think that Iran is doing everything they can to get nuclear weapons during this. Is called tap, 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 you know, tapping it along. It was just, as I was leaving, I was watching the newscast, and Iran just announced it's going to be delayed longer. And, you know, when I do deals, you know, normally I want to finish the deal. Sometimes I'm not sure, so I go bing, bing, bing. And it's called tapping. They're tapping us along. And they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And eventually, we're not going to have any strength left. I would double up the sanctions, triple up the sanctions, get them to the table. It almost looks like we're begging to make a deal. I wrote The Art of the Deal. The first thing I say is you gotta, you know, you can't look like a beggar. We look like a beggar. The United States looks like a total beggar.
Should we just walk away? Would that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, a bad deal is worse than no deal at all by a factor of 10. I'd love to see a deal because nuclear, I think, is the biggest potential problem this world has, is nuclear. You know, today, the weapons are so powerful. Hiroshima is like 1/1000th of what they can do today. So, I mean, my uncle was a professor at MIT, and he told me many years ago, Dr. John Trump, he told me many, many years ago, he said, someday they'll have weapons of mass destruction that you can carry in a suitcase and they can take out a city in 2 seconds and beyond. And that's really what's happening. So the nuclear is so important. To me, that's, you know, when they talk about global warming as our biggest threat, the global warming we have to worry about is nuclear warming. That's the global warming. And you have a lot of madmen out there. And, you know, we can't let Iran have a weapon. We can't, from the standpoint of ourselves and Israel and the world. Just can't have it. And the deal they're making is no good. You know, you have to have a deal where it's any time, any place, okay? Meaning you have to be able to go and inspect any time, any place. And if you don't have that, you might as well not have a deal.
But you need Congress to make a deal. So do you think you'll be able to work with Congress?
Well, I think Congress would be easier if the deal was tougher. Good question. I think Congress, the problem with Congress, they're looking at this deal. Look, you know, that's what I do in life. I make deals. And I'm just watching this, and it looks so bad. Where Kerry goes out, and they break up, and the guy goes back to Iran, and they celebrate him in the street because his deal is so good. And he tells everybody what a great deal he's making and how stupid the United States is. And Obama and Kerry have a news conference, and they outline the deal, and it turns out that isn't the deal. And then the Ayatollah goes, that's not the deal we're making. I would never make that deal. And it turned out that they were right. I would double up the sanctions, triple up the sanctions, and bring them to the table. I mean, I'll give you an example. So we have 4 hostages, used to have 3. I would take those, I would go, and the first thing they should have done is go and say, release the hostages before we start negotiating. If you had the right messenger, now Kerry's not the right messenger, he's not a deal maker. If you had the right messenger to do it, Almost 100%.
Well, if the negotiations don't work and tripling the sanctions doesn't work, then what do you do?
Well, then you can't let them have a nuke. You can't let them have nukes. You just can't. In my opinion, you cannot let Iran have nukes.
So what do you do?
Well, you do what you have to do.
prevent that?
By the way, first of all, I'm 99% sure that I would make a deal. And I'd obviously, by a factor of 100, rather make a deal. But you can't let them have a nuke. So you're going to have to do something with the sites where they're making them. But you cannot let them have a nuke. And you know, one of the problems we have is that our current administration says we would never go in, we would never go in. You know, they've been sort of saying that. And just saying that is bad. True or not. But you can't let them have nuclear weapons.
They've actually said we won't let Iran have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but they said we would not. I mean, I've seen statements where they said we won't go in. Let me give you an example. So you have the hostages. They should have brought that up before they even started. You say, fellas, you got hostages. You got to get them back. They're not doing you any good. It started off with 3, now they have 4, okay? And Washington Post reporter. But one is in there because he's a Christian pastor. We never even brought it up. We never brought the hostages up. Second thing, we're now paying them hundreds of millions of dollars, right? We're giving them the money on a monthly basis. We're giving them hundreds of millions of dollars. And Marie Harth from the State Department said, well, one thing has nothing to do with the other. Of course it does. Of course, I mean, and you could even go third. In Yemen, we're fighting, right? You know, it's reparations. You know, the money we're giving them back, we're starting to give them back that money. Hold it, make it a part of the deal. She said, no, but that doesn't have to do with the nuclear. Then in Yemen, we're actually fighting them, okay? We're fighting them. It's Iran, sort of versus us. And all Yemen is, by the way, is a road to Saudi Arabia. You look at that map, I mean, that's a road to Saudi Arabia. So why isn't Saudi Arabia taking care of this? Why aren't they, why aren't they helping us out? Why aren't they they make $1 billion a day, and they give us nothing, they give us like nothing. So Yemen is purely a road to Saudi Arabia. All you have to do is look at the map. That border is right on Saudi Arabia, and that border never ends. So we shouldn't be giving them the money back, and we should double up the sanctions. And I don't think you'd ever have to do what you said. But if you had to do it, I don't think you'd ever have to do it. If we had the right people, if you had to do it, you'd have to do it.
Do what?
You'd have to go in. I mean, I know you're trying to get me to say that. You're trying to get me to say, oh, Trump will go in. I don't think you'll ever have to do it. But if you did, let's put it this way. You cannot allow them to have nuclear weapons. And if you couldn't make a deal by doubling up and tripling up the sanctions, which you would be able to do by stopping all of the money that we're paying them, by doing the things that we're doing, then you have to do something that will be very drastic. But you cannot let them have a weapon.
You think you could get the Europeans to go along with the idea of increasing sanctions? I mean, it's not
Well,
just
you have to.
because we don't have
You have to. I mean, you have to. I mean, you look at Russia with the Ukraine. I mean, we're pushing that agenda so hard. We're the ones pushing it. Why isn't Germany pushing it? Why isn't Europe pushing it? We're pushing that. We're so far away. So I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, what are we doing? Germany is a very vastly wealthy nation. They're not pushing it. We're pushing it. We're in fights that we shouldn't be in so much. Ukraine should be taken care of by Europe, and we should help them. But we shouldn't be the lead on Ukraine. We have tremendous power, just like we have tremendous potential, but we're not using it. And we're not going to have a great country anymore. I mean, our country is in serious trouble. But, I mean, your question's a fair question. I believe you'll be very successful if you had the right negotiators. We don't have good negotiators. I mean, we have a guy that goes on a bicycle contest. He's in a bicycle tournament at 73, and he falls off the bicycle and breaks. It's like, why is he in a bicycle tournament at 73? He's supposed to be negotiating. And the other thing is, why does it take so long? They've been negotiating forever, Bruce, forever. This thing has been going on. I was a young man when it started, practically. No, somebody said, how long should it take? I said, 1 day. It's 1 day. Maybe a week. Let's say we do badly. It's a week. It goes on forever. Now they just announced this morning it's going to go well into July. I mean, and I know what's happening, because that's my instinct. That's what I'm the best at. I know what's happening. They're doing all sorts of things. Whoops, sorry about that. I'll turn that off. Sorry. I have no idea. I won't even look at it. Huh? Let me turn that sucker off. I'll turn that little sucker off. Forgot about that. Yes.
You're not big fan of this specific
Not at all.
trade deal negotiation. You're concerned about jobs leaving, about factories leaving.
Correct.
But you've done pretty well by globalization yourself, I think. I mean, you talked about selling multi-million-dollar apartments to Chinese. I presume that's part of globalization.
A little bit.
So, and you're a competitor too, so I'm a little confused about why not set up America to win and compete globally? Why?
Good. First of all,
like you're concerned about the rest of the world, and it sounds like you want to close us off from it.
I'm a free trader. I believe in it 100%. Okay, I'm totally free trader. But to have free trade, you have to have smart people and great negotiators. This deal is not a good deal. A number of reasons. Number one, they don't cover, as you know, currency manipulation like it's supposed to be covered. And I'm the one that brought that up 3-4 months ago. And then all of a sudden they started talking about it. In fact, a group asked me if I'd be their spokesman because they so agreed with what I said. They actually paid $300,000 for ads. And I actually did the ad for them. But look, the single greatest weapon that China has is currency manipulation. They did it again this morning when they lowered their interest rate. They lowered the interest rate. They're making their money cheaper. And we don't do anything because we have so many problems, this country, fighting so many things that we don't know what the important things are. So you saw that they lowered their interest rate this morning. 1/4 point, that's a big low. So number one. Number two, currency manipulation has to be powerful. Number two, I'm not a believer in letting people that I don't respect as negotiators negotiate. And number three, very importantly, we should have trade deals with individual countries, not with vast regions. And we can do, whether it's 11 countries or 12 countries or 9 countries, and China's going to come into that thing as sure as you're sitting there. Right after it's done, China's coming in. You probably already heard that, and China's going to take advantage of it. The reason we should do is because everybody treats us badly. All countries treat us badly. But when you look at what's happening in terms of trade, some countries treat us much worse than others. They're benefiting by doing the trade deal because they're going to be favored nations. They're going to take advantage of what the more friendly nations and what the ones that get the better deal. So the bad countries are getting the best deal. So I'm very strongly in favor of individual trade deals. With that being said, I'm a big free trader. I like free trade. But you know, we don't have free trade with China. If you want to make a deal in China, it's almost impossible. It's very, very hard. We don't have free trade with Japan. You want to sell things in Japan. I joke sometimes about, you know, how many Chevrolets are selling, you know, are driving the streets of Tokyo. Not too many. And you see those boats come into California with thousands and thousands of cars. And we don't have free trade with
That's
Japan.
the purpose of this deal, then.
What is?
The purpose of the trade
No.
deal.
This deal is meant for those people. This deal is a bad deal for us. This deal is a bad deal. This is just going to be a continuation, and it's going to make it even worse. And China's then going to come in, and other countries are going to come in. But the bad countries, the ones that's really have treated us badly, are going to be a part of this deal. So what I'm saying is this. I believe in free trade, but we have to make a better deal than that.
Are there any free trade agreements that we've entered into that you're in favor of?
Not too many. I think NAFTA's been a total disaster.
Can you think of any that you favor?
Not too many. Maybe none. Look, Ford's building, I told you, Ford's building a plant in Mexico, okay? What good does that do? What good does it do? They're hiring thousands of people, all Mexican, which is fine for Mexico.
Isn't that what free trade's about?
No, because we don't get anything. We never get anything. What do we get out of it? We don't get anything. Does Mexico come here and build a plant in the United States?
No, but they buy more goods.
No, they don't really. They buy goods made in Mexico. They buy goods made in Mexico.
We export
If you
a lot
check
more
it.
to Mexico than we did before NAFTA.
No, but you take a look at the other way around. Let's put it this way. If this were a profit and loss statement, and you looked at China versus the United States, Japan versus the United States, Mexico, we lose a fortune with every deal we have. If I win, that will all change very quickly. And I'll go a step further. We'll have better relations with those countries than we do now. We don't even have good, they don't respect us. We don't have good relationships with those countries. And yet they're ripping us. I have friends from Mexico, and I have many friends from China, that can't believe that they get away with what they're getting away with. They say, these are wealthy people that buy, I sell apartments for tens of millions of dollars to people that we're talking about. I know, now they didn't know I was running for president, so now they probably, you know, they're not exactly thrilled. But I have a friend from China, one of the richest men in China. He said to me, we can't even believe what we get away with.
So if you were entering into a trade agreement with China, what would be the first 3 elements you'd insist on?
No more currency manipulation. The currency has to go up. Has to go up. Because we can't compete. Our companies can't compete. And by the way, I'm not only talking about China. Recently I ordered 4,000, 4,000 television sets. 4,000 for a big job I'm doing, right? So I buy 4,000 sets. And I'm saying to myself, and I buy many, many sets. I buy many things. And I price it out. Every bid is from South Korea. Every bid. I gave it to Samsung and LG. But I buy a lot of LG, I buy a lot of that. Believe it or not, Sony's not doing so well. That's Japan, that's another competitor, but Sony has lost its way. They had a lot of bad leadership probably, who knows? Because they used to have a brand that you'd pay more for. Now you don't pay more for it. But Samsung and LG, they're all from South Korea.
Forgive me, but what would the second and third elements of a trade deal with China be?
They would have to, I wouldn't say 3 elements. The biggest element is currency manipulation.
Once you've solved that problem?
Once you solve that problem, another element with China is it's very hard to go in and do business. As an example, Boeing, before they were allowed to sell planes, China wanted all of their information. You know, China is building a big airplane manufacturing, massive airplane. Well, they got all of the know-how from Boeing, and they took it as part of the deal. They said, we want all of your copyrights, et cetera, which was a big problem. But Boeing acquiesced because they're selling a lot of planes. But someday they're not going to sell those planes because China is right now building a very, very big, you know, a mammoth thing. You know, as an example, so a friend of mine's a manufacturer, and he's a very good manufacturer, and he's dealing with China, and he makes a certain product, and he's not a public guy at all, but he's pretty big, and he does a good job, high quality, and he can't get his goods into China. I said, really? He goes, Donald, you have no idea how tough it is to get product into China, into Japan, into South Korea, into these countries that just load up with our stuff. So finally, he gets them in, and they charge him tax on the product. Now, we don't charge tax. If you look at trucks, when we send trucks into China, I read where we pay tremendous tax on that. They don't pay tax. We pay tax. It's just not fair. It's almost like it's hard to believe some of the things that I see. Even the environmental stuff, you know, where we have to clean up our factories and they get 30 years. You know that one. Right? They get 30 years. And we have to clean our snow. And I say, who negotiates these deals? So China has to clean up their factories in 30 years. We have to do it now. It's terrible. Now, I love, you know, I've received many environmental awards, many, which shocks people. I mean, they fall off their chairs, but I've received a lot. And I'm a big clean air believer, and I mean, clean air is important, and, you know, so many things. But who makes a deal where China, because, you know, we have one atmosphere. China seems far away, but in terms of the universe, it's not very far away. So if we're clean and they're pouring up stuff, it's not helping us so much. So, you know, I just say, who makes these deals? It's like Sergeant Bergdahl. We get Sergeant Bergdahl, a traitor, who 6 men got killed looking for him. So we get a traitor, and they get 5 of the guys that they most wanted out of anywhere in the world. They wanted these 5 guys, killers and leaders, and they're back in the battlefield, right? So we get Bergdahl, they get 5 guys. Who makes these deals? So it's like a little difficult.
Mr. Trump, I enjoy hearing you talk issue by issue. I'm also really impressed by how you've made your world.
Yeah.
Your talents, your agility, your independence, your force of personality.
I like this guy.
Presidents tend.
What do you? He's my favorite guy. I like him even more than. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead. I do actually, but go ahead.
Presidents don't get to make their own worlds. They have all these other governments. They have our government.
I agree.
How do you adjust to that?
You got to be a leader.
You come in as president of the United States. Well,
got to get them together and lead.
All these other people think they're important too.
I agree. I agree. Oh, I think that's right. But you got to get them together and lead. You got to get people to lead. You got to get people. You know, like you look at Obama with Putin. It's like a disaster.
But could you work with Putin?
I think so. Yeah.
Could you work with Congress?
It's interesting. I think so. You know,
How
I've been dealing with
I've
been dealing with politicians all my life. I deal with politicians on both sides. In fact, I get criticized because I give to Democrats, I give to Republicans, I've given millions to each.
Yeah.
Huh?
You kind of dismiss them all as losers.
I think politicians are all talk, no action. Nobody knows politicians better than I do. I give a lot of money to Democrats as a business person, okay? For instance, I give it to everybody. Everybody loves me. You know, they all love me.
It's got two politicians.
I get criticized for that. They say, "Oh, you gave money." Well, you know, I'm a businessman. I owe it to him. I owe it to my family. I owe it to my company, my employees. I run a great company. You know, I've built a great company. I have some of the greatest real estate assets. Forget this. I have some of the greatest real estate assets in the world, and you know, I get along with everybody. You have to be able to do that if you're president, and you have to be able to get along with Congress. You know, Ronald Reagan did it. I mean, Tip O'Neill and him were total opposites, and yet him and Tip O'Neill were able to do great deals together.
Your impression of Rahm Emanuel and Bruce Browner?
Well, I don't know Bruce. I do respect Rahm. I gave him a contribution. Did you know that? I gave him because his brother is a great friend of mine, Ari, the king of Hollywood. I love Ari. And Ari asked me to give him a contribution. I don't know Rahm other than, you know, but I gave him a contribution. And, you know, when he first ran for mayor, at the request of his brother Ari, who actually represents me, but he's also a good friend. And I like Rahm very much. I really think you have to take care of your crime situation in Chicago. I will be honest. I mean, I think you have to take care of your crime situation. I'm not going to say that today in my speech because I don't want to be negative, but I think you have to take care. I'm talking to you as an outsider, but who has a big stake in Chicago. So maybe I can see it even better than you can, because sometimes you have to be an outsider to see it. You have to take care of the crime situation in Chicago. It's all over the world that Chicago is like the crime capital of the world. I read somebody said about a month ago, and it just stuck with me, that Chicago is more dangerous than Afghanistan. That's a hell of a quote. Now, I don't know if it is. I don't know. But when you look at, you know, all these kids being killed on a daily basis, and it hurts Chicago very badly.
What would you do about it?
Oh, you got to be very tough. What would I do about it? I'd be so tough.
I think the mayor probably feels he's tried everything.
I think you have to be tough. Yeah, got to be.
What does being tough consist of?
It means going in there and just you got to be tough, and you maybe have to go after, you know, stop and frisk stuff, which, by the way, it's going up in New York without the stop and frisk. You may have to go in there and be. You need tough cookies. These are tough kids. These are not babies. These are tough kids. If they saw you walking down the street, they wouldn't give a damn about you. You got to be tough. You can't be so gentle with these people. You got to stop crime. Crime in Chicago is out of control. And I will tell you, outside of Chicago, it's a huge negative and a huge talking point, and a huge negative for Chicago. You got to stop it. And the only way you're going to stop, you're not going to stop it by being nice. You got to stop it by being one tough son of a bitch.
Do you think there's something to the idea that so there's violent crime rising in a number of cities, not just here, whether there's a Ferguson effect, that cops are reacting, that they're more concerned about being getting into some sort of a legal issue? Are they sitting on their hands? Well,
I'm a big fan of the police because I think they've been horribly treated. And you always have bad cookies. I saw a couple of things, you know, I hated the shooting from the back. I mean, he ran away, but for that guy to stand there like it's target practice, I hope he's dealt with very severely. I hated the choking incident. I thought it was terrible on Staten Island. I thought that was absolutely outrageous. You know, and they said it wasn't choking. I thought that was terrible. Some of the others is, you know, Ferguson, I think the big problem with Ferguson, they didn't react quickly enough. You know, that first night was a disaster. That's when the damage took place. And the first night they not Ferguson, Baltimore, they burned down, you know, they burned down a big chunk of the city that took them 20 years. That drugstore took 15 years of economic development to get it built, and it was gone in one night in Baltimore. So, you know, you have great, I know the police, I'm a big fan of the police, but I think the police now are afraid to act. They're afraid to be tough. You know, when I was young, I was 18, 19, and I grew up in Brooklyn and Queens, and it was, you know, some of the areas were rough where my father and I had a business. My father he built houses and he built apartments in Brooklyn. And we would go to White Castle and have lunch, White Castle. And there were rough kids in there, you know, really rough kids. And my father and I would be having lunch in the White Castle, and we liked it because it was 12 cents a hamburger, I think at that time, 11 cents. So it was like, and they were very good. I don't know if they're even still around. It's a long way from Fifth Avenue, right? It's a long way from this. But we would go there every lunch, and you had rough, big, strong, powerful cops. And the gangs were there, and these cops would walk in there, and they had sticks in those days. And they'd break up those gangs, and those gang members were petrified of these guys. Petrified. Those guys would walk, and there was no crime. They were rough. But there was, I mean, you didn't have problems because they had total respect for the cops. And these guys would walk in, get the hell out of here, and they'd start, and these kids were scared stiff. And they were rough kids. Today, the kids, first of all, they don't have to say, I mean, you have some rough cops, but the cops aren't so rough today, to put it mildly, okay? But today, the kids are shouting at the cops and, you know, calling them all sorts of names and laughing at them and like it's a joke. Different world. But I'll tell you what, when I was young, it really had an impression. These guys would walk in and you'd have no problem. You could sit there and you could eat.
So what year are we talking about?
Well, I was 18 years old, 19 years old, Brooklyn. So we're talking.
You were born what year?
1946.
So we're talking about mid-60s?
Yeah, mid-60s. Mid-60s, 64, 65. But we used to go at least 3 times a week, we'd go to White Castle in Brooklyn. And it was a pretty rough area, but you had a lot of rough kids. But those kids had total fear of the cops. Today, if cops ever did that, they'd have them arrested and given the electric chair. They didn't do wrong, they were just forceful. They were strong people. And today, it's not even politically correct to say that. And I am a big fan, and I know you have a couple of percentage bad, and you're going to have that in any business. You have that in your newspaper business. You have it in everything. But you're going to have to be rough with these kids in Chicago because I'm telling you, the reputation of Chicago is getting battered badly. Yes.
Yeah. This is a little bit more of almost a personality question, I guess. You have, between the show, just your being known in the casinos,
right.
You know, just over time, being well known in the books, your Twitter feed, you have a public persona. It's
right.
almost, and I think it's almost becomes, you may not agree with this, but it almost becomes a caricature of Donald Trump. And, you know, you're straight talking.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like here I am, but I've heard that.
Yeah, so how do you get people who are not your devoted fans? You have people who I see it on your Twitter feed, you retweet them, people who are, you know, love you and, you know, want you as president, no questions asked. But how do you get everybody else, people that aren't that devoted necessarily, to know you on like a more personal, you know, be able to connect with you a little bit better?
Yeah.
But and also to believe that what you're doing and running for president is sincere and is not part of sort of your narrative of that you've kind of created through reality television and all these other things.
Yeah, it's a great question. First, you know, I have over 3 million people on Twitter, as you know, and I have 2 million people. I have over 5 million, well over 5 million, and it builds up. I mean, I think we picked up like 100,000 people over the last few days. So I have a lot of people that like the Twitter, Facebook stuff. But when you have over 5 million people, you know, it gives you, it's sort of like semi-owning the Chicago Tribune. I like the Chicago Tribune more, but it gives you something. If somebody writes about me, I can hit them also, and it gives you a lot of power. I mean, I've been able to have people back down because I have tremendous power with it. You know, I have more followers than almost all the newspapers, and it's a, you know, I consider it a good thing. It's also something you have to use judiciously, and you know, I try to do that, but it's something you have to use judiciously. The question of running, so, you know, I'm in second place all alone now and not far behind Bush, who I think is a person that doesn't have what it takes to be a great president, okay? I don't think he has the strength or the stamina. I don't think he has the aptitude to be a great president. And I think it's just going to be more of the same. So, you know, with that being said, he's a nice person and he may get in, and because, you know, somebody said to me, just to sort of answer a little bit, it's a difficult question actually, but, and the answer maybe I don't, maybe I won't be able to, and that's possible. But somebody said to me the other day at a press conference, Mr. Trump, do you think you have a personality that's a nice personality where you're going to be able to get people to vote for you? I said, I think it's going to be an election of competence. First of all, I am liked by people. I have a lot of friends, and I give a lot of money to charity, and I help people, and I love to help people. I really do. I think I'm a good person. But I actually said, I'm not sure that matters this time because people are so tired of incompetent people that I think this is going to be an election based on competence more than anything else.
So what's wrong with Hillary?
You know, Hillary's got a long past. I know Hillary very well. And, you know, the whole email thing. Hey, look, if that was done by by Richard Nixon's group, they would have all been in jail. You know, the emails. Hey, the famous Rosemary Woods, 18 minutes of a tape and it destroyed her life. She was, you know what happened to her. 18 minutes, here's 6 years of emails. And this is after she gets a subpoena from the United States Congress and then deletes everything and gets rid of it. And she wasn't supposed to have it in the first place. If that were a conservative Republican, she'd be in jail right now, or he would be in jail. No, I think Hillary's got a lot of weaknesses. I know Hillary better than anybody. Nobody knows Hillary like I. Hillary came to my wedding. So I know Hillary really well. Hillary and Bill came to my wedding in Palm Beach. And I know him very well. I'm the only one that can beat Hillary because I know everything about Hillary. But what she did with and the reason I'm against Hillary is that I think it's going to be more of the same. The country can't take more of the same. This country's ready to explode. And we're in a bubble. We're in a financial bubble where you're getting free money. I made a lot of money in the stock market. I never invested in stocks in my life, essentially. And I made a lot of money in the stock market. In fact, I was going to show it. I was going to put it down in the report I gave. And my people said, oh, don't do it, because, you know, I bought them. And the reason I said, let's see, they're giving you free money. There's almost no interest rates. How can the stock market not go up? So about 3 years ago, I bought a lot of stock, and I sold it when I decided that I was running because I didn't want to have somebody say, you have a conflict because you own ExxonMobil or something and you're running. So I sold it and did well. I mean, I think out of 52 stocks, 48 went up. That's pretty good. That's what you need as president. See, when I made my speech the other day, it was interesting. When I said, I'm really rich, and they cut me off in the clips. I said, I'm really rich. But I really said, I'm really rich. And then I went on to say, and that's the kind of mentality you need running the country, because the country has to be rich again in order to be great again. Because right now we're a debtor nation. We're like a third world nation. Our infrastructure's
most of the country sees Hillary as really rich too.
Well, she's rich.
Most of the country sees all you guys as
yeah,
really
no,
rich.
well, Hillary's rich. But Hillary got rich a different way. I got rich by building buildings and putting people to work. That's a different kind of rich.
But rich is rich.
No, there's a way. I mean, I got rich by putting people to work. And they got rich doing it a different way. Now, it'll be interesting to see with the speeches, you know, what was gotten for those speeches, et cetera. Hey, look, I know Hillary so well, and I don't like speaking badly. I think it's too early. But I can only say this. Hillary is very vulnerable. She may even be vulnerable before the election. I mean, I'm seeing what's happening in New Hampshire, and I'm seeing what's happening in Iowa. And I get, you know, speaking of that, I get the biggest crowds, I get the biggest receptions of, you know, these Republican candidates. It's not even close. And that's why I went to number 2. The biggest problem I had, Bruce, was people thought I wasn't running. And once I announced, and I don't think, just to finish your question then, I don't think anyone's thinking now I'm not running. You know, I filed my papers, I'm getting the other papers done, the financial papers done. I actually gave a financial statement, which turned out to be, which is very conservative, by the way, and turned out to be much more than people thought, and it's very conservative. So, you know, I think I'm not hearing. I think one of the reasons, and a lot of people said that, if people actually thought Trump would run, I think he'd do very well in the polls. Most people thought, you know, why do I want to give up my life? He asked me, he said, why would you want to do that? You know, you have a good life. You have beautiful family, homes, everything. And I've always said it's very hard for a very rich person, a person that lives by the deal, but it's very hard for a very rich person to run for office, especially for president. And it is, you know, it is. You see it with the Miss Universe, where I own it, and because I'm running for president, I get canceled by a major company. That if I'm not running for president, that doesn't happen. Now I'm going to sue them, and I'm going to do very well. You know, that's what I do in life. But it makes my life more difficult. It certainly would have been easier not to have to do that.
Are you ready for the scrutiny of having to release
Yeah.
your tax returns and schedules?
Yeah, I'm ready for everything.
Romney went through. And
Yeah, well,
talk a little bit about-
Romney didn't do it properly.
Can you talk a little bit about healthcare, the Affordable Care Act?
Yeah.
Can it be fixed? And if so, how?
Well, look, you know, people are very unhappy with it, okay? Most people are very, and not everybody, but most people are really unhappy. People that really had plans that they liked are now having plans where they don't even have plans, or they have plans that they hate. And it's, I have, you know, one of the great unknown things, you should do a story on this, is doctors are going to be, you know, they're leaving now. I have so many friends that are doctors, they're going to leave because they have, one doctor said to me, I have more accountants than I have nurses because of the complexity of it. It's an unbelievable mess. And the deductibles are so high that unless you get hit by a tractor, you're not going to even use it. The premiums are so costly. And I've always said, you know, if you had a private system, and I'm also a believer in taking care of everybody, by the way, everybody. Not, you know, we're not going to leave 30% out there to hang. So I can't say, I can't do that. But for a vast majority, if you had a private system where the one thing the government should do is make sure the company is strong, because you don't want to go with somebody and then you have a problem where the company goes bad because they didn't have the money. That's the thing. But you got to get rid of state lines. For instance, in New York, when I bidded it out, I used to bid this stuff out myself. I'd say, because I have so many employees. I have so many. I've employed tens of thousands of people over the years. Tens of thousands. You just take a job like that. You saw how many men were working on that job. But you add that up times many, many, many things that I've done. I've employed tens of thousands of people. So in New York, a lot of employees, I can't go outside the boundary. Now that's done because of the insurance companies, because they want to have a monopoly on all the states. So instead of bidding it out to somebody in Chicago and somebody in Los Angeles and getting 10 or 15 bids and pick the bid I want, I'm stuck with like one company. And you can't make a good deal. Getting rid of the state lines is imperative. And you could have some great private. Then you have to take care of the other people, and you can do that through working with hospitals and working with other people.
Also,
oh, you have to set something up to help people. I don't want people not to have.
Guarantee if you walk in, you'll be covered, you'll be treated.
No, you have to work a deal with the hospitals. We have hospitals that aren't even doing well, and you have to work a deal with people that don't have money. You have so many people with no money.
So you're saying you would guarantee coverage?
I would work a deal with hospitals where hospitals have to take care of people. But for the most part, the people would be able to take care of privately. Now that wouldn't be as good a system as the people that get, you know, a proper system. But you could work a beautiful healthcare system in this country, do it privately, mostly privately, and you would have great healthcare. And the one thing the government has to do is make sure those companies are strong. In other words, not where they get so competitive that all of a sudden, you know, they go out of business and everybody's left high and dry.
I think you said you're...
I was just going to say, who does a President Trump surround himself with? You mentioned Reagan bridging the gap with Tip O'Neill, but you know he had guys like Jim Baker around him who knew
people.
how to work the system.
I agree.
Who do you surround yourself?
I would, you know, as much as I dislike I love politicians because I've made a fortune off politicians. All right.
But that doesn't speak well to.
But you do have a system to work, and you would get combinations of politicians. I can say this. For trade negotiations, I would get the smartest guys. I know the smartest guys. I know the best negotiators on Wall Street. I know the best. Well, I don't want to give you names now. I can't do that.
Are there politicians that
Yeah.
you would say by name, this is a person,
if
not that person, but someone like them?
There are people that I think are good. I just don't want to name them now, but there are some people that I think that are good, and I think you have to, you know, you're staying within a system to an extent. But I will say that one of the big problems we have is trade. Trade is draining us, and I would have the best I know the good ones, the bad ones. I know the overrated ones. I know the ones that nobody ever heard of that are phenomenal negotiators. And we would have really great trade deals. We would make a tremendous amount of money on trade. And that would allow us to do infrastructure, and it would allow us to save Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all of those things.
Would President Trump pardon Rod Blagojevich?
Boy, I think it was tough what happened to him. I'll be honest. You know, I don't know him well other than he was on The Apprentice. And
why was he on?
Because he was, you know, semi-celebrity, and it was good. Actually, it was good having him on. I found him to be, I can only speak for myself, and I didn't know him well. I found him to be a very nice guy, not sophisticated, had a little knowledge of computers and things. You know, we found that out too, because, you know, they'd be all sitting around the computer, and he didn't really sort of work the computer. We said, what's wrong? And, you know, which is okay. We found him to be very nice. Now, he was under a lot of pressure at that point, so you know he's not going to be perhaps. But I think that's an awfully tough sentence he got. For what supposedly he did, because what he did is what politicians do all the time. They make deals. I mean, what did he say? He wanted to be a senator or something, as I remember it, right? And you don't think politicians say that every day to other people in their party? I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do that, but I got to be taken care of in some way,
So maybe you'd pardon him?
I wouldn't I don't know enough about it. I mean, you just I haven't heard the name since he left The Apprentice. I just thought he got treated, I just thought it was a very tough sentence. I thought it was a really tough sentence.
You could commute the sentence.
For what he did. Look, these politicians, look at Hillary. She makes a speech and she does something. Why isn't she treated the way Rob Blagojevich was? What she does is much more out there than what Rob Blagojevich did. I mean, frankly, when I read about him, he just sounded stupid more than anything else. I mean, how stupid can you be? But it sounded stupid. It was so ridiculous. But, I mean, I think they sent him for how many years, Bruce?
14 and a half.
Yeah, 14 and a half years. And yet Hillary's going around making speeches and the husband, and there's nothing, and she's canceling emails, and she goes around.
He was charged at one point with trying to extort the Tribune to get us all fired.
Well, that's probably why it's in jail. That's why I'm being very nice to you.
We have time for one more
okay.
question. Go ahead, John.
Could you name some folks you admire?
My father.
Okay.
Passed away. Okay, so I loved Ronald Reagan. I worked with Ronald Reagan. I was a young guy, he was old, and he knew me and he liked me. I really think that he had something very special. He had an ability to make you feel good about the country, in addition to, certain ways. And I will say this, in all fairness, I have great respect for Barack Obama, because when you think of his life and when you think of what he's done, it's something I respect. The thing I'm most disappointed about is, I mean, we disagree on policy and everything else. I thought he would be a great cheerleader. I was obviously not in his camp, but I thought that Barack Obama would be a great cheerleader for the country. I thought that he would be somebody that would really, unite people, especially African-American youth and African Americans. And honestly, the African American youth are doing so poorly. I mean, nothing, you look at Baltimore, you look at Cleveland, you look at Newark, New Jersey, you look at these places. They're doing about as bad as they've ever done. And I thought he would be a better cheerleader for the country and a better uniter for the country. So that's, very disappointing. But I mean, I have great respect and in some cases admiration for many people. I mean, for many people. I think Merkel in Germany, she's done an amazing job. I think she's really the leader, and as a woman, she's done a fantastic job in Germany, keeping it all together. Their economy is going great. They're doing very well.
What's that have to do with her being a woman?
Excuse me?
What do you mean, as a woman?
No, I think as a woman, I think she's a great representative for women. I mean, if you look at what she's done, she's a great representative for women. And when she came in, I mean, I can't stress it strongly enough. She's just a highly respected person. And we can be cute and nice and everything, but the fact is, I think she's been a great representative of women. I think she's done a fantastic job.
How can you say that? The high Senate. I want to get one last question.
Just one question.
I'll let you
What do you think about that immigration reform? How deal with this
Immigration reform?
How you want to deal with this million of immigrants already living here?
Well, you have 11 million, but there could be 30 million. Nobody even knows how many. They're pouring across the border, and you can't let the illegals. You have to have a border, or you're not going to have a country. You have to be able, and so important, you have to be able to have people come across legally. And I'm all for coming across legally. And when somebody comes across who's a bad hombre, who's got records and bad things happening, we can't let them in the country. And when we have people that are causing tremendous problems in the country, we have to get them out very fast. With that being said, you have a lot of great people in the country that have come in, and something has to be worked out. Because when you have perhaps 30 million, I heard that the other day for the first time, Bruce. I've always heard 11, but now they're saying it might be 11, but it might be 30. And that's part of the problem. They don't even know how many nobody knows. We don't know. But some good things can happen on immigration. Some very positive things can happen on immigration. But when somebody comes in that's bad, or somebody is bad in the country, we got to get them out fast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Great honor.
Thanks a lot.
Great honor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.